Verdun.
A regiment of engineers was immediately sent to Verdun to strengthen the defenses on the east bank. Time was running out. German deserters were crossing the lines in ever-increasing numbers with stories that all leave had been cancelled, that something terrible was about to happen. Men, and still more men, marching towards Verdun. They were old hands, these men. Old hands of 25 or 30, many already wounded in action, toughened by 2 years of war. Westphalians from Münster, Düsseldorf and the Ruhr, men from Hesse, descendants of those who had fought as mercenaries against Napoleon and for him. Brandenburgers from Berlin, one of the elite units of the German army. 3 of the crack army corps of the German army, 72 battalions. Their wait was a fearful one. On February the 11th, the day before the attack, Verdun's treacherous climate.
The Russian Civil War began in the aftermath of the Great October Revolution of 1917. While the revolution itself was almost bloodless, the civil war that followed was one of the most tragic periods in Russian history. Violence and cruelty became commonplace in the 4 years that followed, and hopes for democracy were crushed. Russia was ruled by a small group of revolutionaries known as the Bolsheviks, who understood only too well what they must do to hold the power they had seized. Those who opposed the Bolsheviks understood that these new leaders would irrevocably change Russia. The struggle between the Bolsheviks and their enemies shaped the new Soviet state and its later development. Millions were killed and crippled, while hundreds of thousands, the bloom of the nation, left the country never to return. The causes of the Russian Civil War were deeply rooted in Russian history. The First World War had caused desperate suffering among the Russian people, but other more long-standing problems were just as important. For centuries, Russian peasants had been tied to land they did not own and forced to work.
Civil War sends us this week grim pictures from the city of Oviedo. Held by the rebels, it was subjected to frequent air raids which sent the civilian population hurrying for shelter. And the awful aftermath. Stately buildings razed to the ground, the streets are shambles. Shortage of food means that men and women search among the rubbish heap a pariah dog. Insurgent troops entered the city, relieving the garrison which had been holding out under the command of General Aranda. Relief, too, meant a renewal of the food supply, though dealt out...
Cameramen. Therefore, they stressed Nazi superiority. Success is unimpeded as Hitler's divisions move against outnumbered Polish defenders. Later, on other world battlefronts, the Allies are to destroy the myth of the invincibility of the Nazi armies. But this is Hitler at the peak of his armed might, and the record of a nation overrun in just days is of military as well as historical importance. The spark is set off in the free city of Danzig. Nazi secret agents had long plotted the revolt against law and order. Germany called it liberation. The world knew that Danzig represented the ignition of the European powder keg, the excuse for Hitler's hordes to begin their destructive campaign of conquest. Here is the historic last stand of Danzig's loyal defenders. They're entrenched in the city's post office and under repeated fire of Nazi-trained militiamen. Taking cover behind an advancing tank, the attackers move in. Gasoline is sprayed on the building, and its doom is sealed.
The troubled situation in Athens has been the virtual stopping of supplies so sorely needed by the population. In the words of Mr. Churchill during his memorable speech at the all-party conference in the Greek capital, we came with good hearts and full hands. But while the fratricidal strife between rival factions continues, work has now almost ceased on unloading our supply ships in the port of Piraeus. Meanwhile, in the city itself, men of a British airborne unit occupying a rooftop position fire down into the streets to prevent movement of Eylas forces. The ancient buildings hold sudden death, for the Greek warriors against whom General Scobie's forces have so regretfully had to take up arms learned guerrilla warfare in a hard school when they were fighting against their German oppressors. Amid the tragedy of an Allied nation divided against itself, we again recall Mr. Churchill's words. Now that these things have happened, he said, we are bound in honor to bring the matter to a good conclusion.
In the cautious advance against the Communists. An advance whose purpose, General Ridgway states, is not to seize ground, but to wipe out the enemy. The Chinese Red Army, fighting desperately in small isolated stands, prefers to give ground on wider fronts rather than join battle. And it's up to the infantry to clear out the pockets of die-hard Communists. With the enemy falling back to the Han River, United Nations commanders had expected that the Reds would make their stand there. But under a steady, withering barrage, GIs are able to cross the river and establish a beachhead. Within 2 hours, a pontoon bridge spans the Han, and United Nations troops and equipment pour across toward the capital city of Seoul. Moments later, Chinese Communists, prisoners, are being marched to the rear. Seoul, too, falls into United Nations hands.
It's dawn, and Alpha Troop 19 is commuting to war. 21 GIs bound for a jungle clearing a mile from the Cambodian border. American soldiers hiking their way through the sweaty jungles of South Vietnam, searching for an elusive enemy. The temperature is almost 100 degrees, and the jungle stifles even the tiniest breeze. The going is slow. There could be a North Vietnamese regiment hiding a few yards away, and no one would see it. Nobody talks, so you start thinking. Specialist 4 Dwayne Bloor is thinking he's going to meet his fiancée in Honolulu in 2 weeks. and he will show her the silver star the general pinned on him yesterday. Devalle is the lone medic in the platoon. He's scared from the moment he gets out of the chopper to the moment it picks him up. Scared that someday he's going to get killed picking up a wounded buddy. Jorgensen just became a sergeant, but he doesn't like it. He'd rather be up walking point, where the action is. He's already got 3 Purple Hearts, so everybody calls him Hero. Then there's Lieutenant...
Con respecto a la negociación, el pueblo tiene que reclamar esos derechos que lo que no había en la Constitución existe, ¿no? Pero más sin embargo, por ejemplo, que en la Cámara de Diputados casi no hay un representante que es pueblo maya, ¿no? Entonces eso no se toma en cuenta, pero ahora con todos esos acuerdos tenemos que exigirlo. Por eso le digo.
In the desert kingdom of Oman, a British officer leads a company of Omani troops into action against communist guerrillas. It is the only shooting war outside Northern Ireland that Britain is still involved in. The war in Oman is an unknown war, and Britain's involvement in it something of a mystery.
Here is the only place that I know of where an army officer can put into practice the things that he was taught at Sandhurst or Mons and the things that he's been trying out on Salisbury Plain for a long time.
June the 5th, 1967. Around 300 Israeli aircraft, mainly French-built fighter bombers, prepared to launch the most decisive airstrike in history. Their target, the air forces of Egypt, Syria and Jordan. However sweet the victory, for the pilots it remains an impersonal experience.
Only thing that you hear is a lot of noise that comes from your earphones, the commanding of the whole controlling net that are in the air. You don't hear the shooting. Maybe you can hear your shooting, your strafing of your cannon, but you don't hear the hits. You don't hear the shouts. You don't see the face and you don't see the blood of...
Saturday the 6th of October 1973, Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the Jewish calendar. Israel's border troops, below strength during the holiday, came under surprise attack by Syrian and Egyptian forces 10 times greater than their own. This time they learnt to respect the courage and fighting abilities of the Arab armies. In particular the Egyptians, who fought their way across the Suez Canal with spectacular success. and then engaged them in the biggest and bitterest tank battles since the Second World War.
This was once the richest part of the richest city in the Middle East. Now it's the front line of the war in the Lebanon. Buildings where last year the money makers of the Western world exchanged their millions are now the barricades of Beirut. The war has lasted 12 months. It has ruined a country and destroyed a nation. There is supposed to be a ceasefire in the Lebanon, but it means nothing. There have been 28 ceasefires, and each of them has been followed by even fiercer fighting. It's now a year since Lebanon's social tensions finally and inevitably exploded into war.
The Iranian oil fields. The Khuzestan landscape favored invaders using tanks and armored vehicles, making it easy to drive deeply into Iran. With a 5-to-1 superiority and facing only one depleted Iranian armored division, Iraqi forces moved quickly despite lacking air cover. Often using tanks as artillery, they softened up distant targets with heavy barrages as troops moved into more local objectives. The Iraqis' Soviet-made anti-tank gunships found few targets, scouting planes rapidly being pocketed by dugouts and entrenched artillery. The Iraqis had already proved these tactics against Kurdish rebels.
prozor, vas se bila više.
Dobro, ja idem.
Koji? Naš?
Predajte se potpunom okruženju. Samo budete javiti. Pušim malonu. Neša bomo ja mati.
Poginuo. Daćemo. Govori. Nemoj. Piša.
Where's the sign? Where is the sign?
Спасибо! Спасибо! Куда можно садиться? Женя, блядь, не давай, ебаный в рот! Да принимай, руками не махайте! Вот это здание комендатуры, 3-й этаж уже горит.
Lakini haka kana mashinda kule kugonga kale kakadena.
Kakutana vingine washura sisi tunaenda filme. Pandere mpando tu.
Mtafuta kwa walitupa. Chukua. Mtafuta mwizi manyumba fasi yote ziko. Walikuwa kinywa makali makali ba. Angalia bwana anaingia. Срать.
Место здесь снимать, я хуй знаю. Я чуть не ёбнул, вы... Что случилось?
Сзади, сзади, смотри, сзади.
Давай, уходим, уходим все!
Видел глиняная стенка за кирпичной стенкой?
И что, там сидят?
Вот мы только отошли за кирпичную, оттуда уже стреляли.
Ну, дым помог?
Ну не надо снимать, пацаны,
Да
что вы гоните, что ли?
Все, уходим!
Пошли на! Не надо мне снимать! Все, пойдем. Собирай народ.
Что за телевидение?
Вести.
Вести?
Да.
Меня мама увидит.
Конечно.
Нифига, мужики, бля, и так родители охуевают. Нахуй вы еще снимаете, бля? Привет, мама.
Мама!
Troops loyal to President Laurent Kabila, backed by their Zimbabwean and Angolan allies, grimly defend the airport northeast of Kinshasa, fighting off a determined but apparently unsuccessful offensive by rebel forces. Kabila's troops attempted to keep civilians off the streets. In some areas they were successful, but elsewhere the people of Kinshasa openly chanted in celebration, exulting over the charred remains of rebel soldiers. Meanwhile, government troops hunted down other suspected rebels. When they found any in the capital, chilling scenes were the result. No mercy was shown in this case. A rebel soldier given no chance of survival, thrown bodily from a bridge, then finished off by gunfire. The atmosphere was one of confusion, with troops often unable to tell the difference between a rebel soldier and one of their own. But there was no hiding the confidence of Kabila's forces as news filtered through of other successes.
Marines stormed into the Taliban-held town of Dahana in southern Helmand province.
Keep going.
The first U.S. troops ever to set foot in this Taliban stronghold.
We're on the offensive now instead of the defensive. It's good to get out here on the offensive.
Over there! See it? Yeah, watch out. Get up, man, get up!
The Taliban had no intention of giving up this strategic base easily. Intense fighting went on for 8 hours. Taliban gunmen firing back from hidden positions on rooftops and courtyards. Their resistance so strong, the Marines say the militants must have known they were coming.
Say this is the wall, he's like exactly right there, yeah. You'll see him.
Ramming their truck through a wall, Marines broke into a suspected Taliban compound, looking for weapons and drugs. 66 pounds of opium were seized. Not surprising in this town, Dahana is vital to the Taliban's drug-running operations here in opium-rich Helmand province.
By liberating Dahana, we free the local populace from the influence of the Taliban. They're able to go about their daily lives without being faced with intimidation or murder.
And the Marines are hoping be able to vote in next week's presidential election.
On the 12th of July 2006, a violent conflict erupted between Israel and neighboring Lebanon. It began when a military unit of Hezbollah, a Shia Muslim group based in Lebanon, crossed the border and ambushed a group of Israeli soldiers. 3 of the soldiers were killed and 2 kidnapped and taken into Lebanon. Israeli troops attempted a rescue of the abducted soldiers but were unsuccessful. 5 more were killed in the attempt.
Hezbollah is widely supported by Lebanese Muslims. It provides welfare for the poor and is credited with driving Israeli forces out of Lebanon after 18 years of occupation. Leader Hassan Nasrallah said the only way Israel would get its soldiers back would be to trade them for political prisoners held in Israeli jails. Because of the delicate political balance in the country, the Lebanese government did not get involved. Israel took this as support for Hezbollah. The Lebanese people were to pay dearly. Israel bombarded Lebanon from air, land and sea. They mounted an air and...
الله أكبر احتموا
هاتوا بسم الله الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر
Of streets and alleyways to fight to the death. It is their last stand in Iraq. And the video you're about to see illustrates the type of people the Iraqi Special Forces are fighting. This is crazy, crazy stuff. He's high on adrenaline, maybe something else. One of the men uses his radio to urge other fighters on. They're putting so many rounds down, his weapon becomes super hot. But he keeps firing. We don't know what happens later, but they probably died here.
بدأ الآن الوحدات بضرب الهندسة بتنفيذ الآن مشهد مقرب لهذه الأبطال تتنافى مع عاداتنا وأخلاقنا وكذلك يظهر الآن ومشاهد كبيرة لأعداد قدرت بالآلاف. كان عدد هؤلاء الأسرى الذين أسروا أكثر من 2000 أسير الذين تم أسرهم. الآن سيتسلم هؤلاء
يا ربي لك الحمد، هذا بفضل ربي، هذا من الأسرى
أنفسهم بعض الذين قاموا بتسليم أنفسهم.
خلوه يشتاف في الدرب الحالة. ها ابني خلوه في الدرب الحالة، خلوه في الدرب الحالة، خلوه في الدرب الحالة. الحين اصحابنا
guerrilla army fighting and dying for democracy. They're outgunned by Myanmar's ruthless military dictatorship. But it's the regime that's in retreat. Towns, border posts, even cities are falling after an unprecedented rebel offensive. We're travelling secretly into Myanmar to visit newly liberated territory, meeting young rebels building their own weapons in jungle camps, just as Myanmar's brutal army tries to regain its lost ground.
Oh shit!
A rare glimpse of a deadly conflict ignored by most of the world. We're in Karenni State, along Myanmar's eastern border. 90% of it is now held by the resistance. This is its largest city, Loikor.
One block.
We're with rebel fighters from the Karenni Nationalities Defence Force. They're showing us just how much of the city they now control.
Okay, they're starting to... Separate Assault Brigade are loading into the Bradleys and heading out on an important mission. As soon as the vehicle headed toward the enemy, an unexploded shell got caught under the tracks. But the Bradley handled it easily. The crew only felt a light jolt. The gunner sees a Russian APC in the scope, heading straight toward them, attacking Ukrainian Bradley. Bradley opens fire with lethal force. The BTR-82 is being punctured like a can. Watch how it's firing randomly, not even aiming. The gun mechanisms are obviously damaged. The commander's words confirm it. Watch as the soldier jumps out on the move. The APC has been disabled. Those Russian soldiers were lucky. They evacuated just in time before the vehicle caught fire. Meanwhile, the team is almost at their target. The Bradley opens suppressive fire. The Russians are terrified by the Ukrainian assault. The soldiers from the 3rd Brigade are ready for the fight.